Hi there. Today I want to spend a few minutes talking about why people hire an independent educational consultant, folks like us with Stodghill Consulting. And there are lots of varying reasons. Every family is different in terms of the reasons they come to us for support. A lot of times it is because they feel like the student is not getting a lot of individual attention in their high school setting. And that's usually truer in really large school settings where the student to counselor ratio is really high. Sometimes it is because there's a lot of misinformation out there and families don't really know how to weed through it all and to make sense of it and want a trusted resource in terms of asking questions, verifying information, and simply getting guidance on how to navigate this process. The other reason is oftentimes because this process is so stressful, it can cause a lot of stress at home and nobody wants to deal with that. I didn't want to deal with it in my own experience when my son was going through it. And I am, quote unquote, an expert in this field. So I get that it can be a time that is anxiety provoking and causes stress levels in the home to rise. And so a lot of times families are hiring us simply because they need us to manage the process and to be the person in charge of the deadlines and in charge of enforcing what a student needs to be accomplishing to keep on track in this process. And fortunately, our group is very adept at all of that. We are actually all parents of college, even some graduates, college age children and beyond. So we have been through the process, not only as experts in the field, but also as parents who have seen the varying ways this can play out in your home. So that is one of the reasons, probably the most common reason that I will hear a parent say they want to use our group is because we are able to provide that buffer in the process for them. But let me talk about some more practical reasons. So first and foremost, the American system of higher education and applying to attend a school, a university or a college is not straightforward. There is not a one size fits all. This is how we do it for every single application process. Sure, there is something called the Common Application that streamlines the work that a lot of students have to do for the basics of their application, writing one singular primary essay, one singular activities list, those kinds of things. However, there are a lot of different nuances in various application processes. Some schools will ask the student to submit a copy of their transcript themselves. Some schools will ask them to complete something called a self-reported academic report. Some schools will ask them to, a lot of schools will ask for this, but they have to complete a residency requirement determination type form. Various little tidbits like that come up that students aren't necessarily aware of, and parents either for that matter. So it can be overwhelming as you get into the process thinking that it's just a straightforward, I'm going to fill out my application, submit my test scores, teacher recommendations, and transcript. And even that is not how it goes because that is not completely straightforward. So we really help students stay on track with what are the varying details that are going to be required of them throughout this process, depending on the school that they are applying to. Another big reason that especially parents and guardians come to us is because there is so much misinformation. In fact, there are myths out there that are practically legendary in some ways in terms of what is being said about how to get into college or what it takes or the secret sauce, those kinds of things. We don't have the secret sauce. Let me just say that right up front. But what we do have is a lot of years of working in this industry and access to the information if we don't already know it ourselves. So we are committed to making sure we bust through the myths that you're hearing and things like that in this process to try to make it a much more manageable and understandable process. Because at the bottom level, this should be somewhat fun. This is a huge rite of passage for a lot of students, and we want them to try to enjoy this as much as possible. And so our tagline is maximize the opportunities and minimize the stress. And hopefully what we're doing is exactly that and making it a little bit more enjoyable as you go through this process. Beyond that, we obviously cover the basics, the nuts and bolts of guiding students through selecting and crafting a list of schools that meets their needs, that fits them academically and socially and emotionally and financially, which is often what the parents and guardians care the most about. But we also then help students just, again, do the practical pieces, writing an essay under our guidance, completing a resume that is well thought out and really presents their activities and their strengths in the right format. We talk about any special circumstances that they may have that they may need to discuss in the application process, whether that is learning differences that need to be addressed, whether that is a long-term illness that kept them out of school that we need to talk about, changing schools. We have several students throughout the years who have been to more than one high school, and we talk to them about how we present that in the best way throughout the process, and when they articulate why, we want it to come across in a really positive way. And so all of these things that we're going to help them with, which are pretty standard, that anybody in the field is going to do. The thing that sets us apart, us specifically at Stodghill Consulting, is that we are all educators. We have actually done this work in schools, whether that is in the actual college counseling office with more than 25 years experience for each of us who did that work. We have an academic advisor and librarian and teacher. We have a new addition to our staff who is coming to us from the college admissions side, where she spent 25 years doing that kind of work. So collectively, what really is the hallmark of who we are is, again, the fact that we are all coming from an educational background. We did not come into this work from other areas of our lives. We were trained in schools. We worked with students directly in lots of different situations as advisors, as coaches, as, again, teachers, and helping them do things beyond just, the basics in the classroom, which is really a big part of this process. And so I think if you are considering hiring an independent educational consultant, you should think about those kinds of things, as well as their years of experience and obviously some of the more obvious questions you might be asking if you're looking to hire someone. But for us, it really comes back to that every single time, is that we are all educators. And as I mentioned before, we are all parents of students who've either graduated from college or are currently in college, or we have the youngest one who is about to embark on college next fall. So we are all adept at even managing it and knowing what it feels like to be a parent in this process, which I think also sets us apart as a group when we're talking with students and families about all of this. Obviously, if you have any questions about how we can help you specifically, any specific nuances in your own child's trajectory in education that you want to bounce off of us, we are happy to do that. We would love to work with you and try to make this process as easy and comfortable as it possibly can be. So please get in touch if you would like to learn more about our services and how we support families through this process.